Welcome to Adapted, the podcast where we explore adaptations of various forms. My name is Tom, and with me is.
Pat.
So, this week we're doing Henry James, who was born in New York City in 1843, dying, I believe, in Britain in 1916. And Henry James, obviously, this is our No Nobler section, and he then never won a Nobel Prize. But I will say he was nominated four times. In 1911 by three members of something in England called the Society of Authors, which just seems to be like a few guys who had some pull at the institution. Then again in 1912 by two members of the American Academy, which seems to be a few guys in
Yeah, I
America
was
who
gonna
had
say I don't
some
think
pull in the
America.
institution. 1912 by a few other professors, one of whom was one of the first English professors at Harvard. And
Hmm.
then shortly before his death in 1916, and his death disqualified him certainly, was Julio Ritter, who was uh, the first internationally famous Finnish Sanskrit expert. So
All right.
so with the long and storied history of Finnish Sanskrit
Sanskrit.
experts,
Yeah.
this man started that trend. But James did suffer a stroke in December of 1915, and he died a few months later. There's a critic I was reading about this who basically suggests James had no chance because of his British allegiance. I think he was a British citizen
He
by
well, he
the
became a
end.
British citizen during the war.
Yeah, which was a huge problem for them. And you could see it, right? Like 1914, 1918, they don't give it away. The only country that's involved in the war at the time that the Lit Prize gets a that the Lit Prize goes to a person from that country is Roman Roland, who
Yeah.
gets it in 1915, and he's an anti-war guy, right? He's very outspoken. Everybody else, it's 1915. It doesn't go to anyone. 1917, it was shared by two people from Denmark, which was neutral. So I think the argument is James had no chance because he became a British citizen. Um, that and he's
But even
untimely.
in the years before, what I've heard is that again, it's like apparently Henry James doesn't translate very well into most other languages, which isn't a surprise. I mean, he's
Mhm.
hard. He's not like difficult to read in English, but he's idiosyncratic in a way that just the way he writes sentences, I imagine is very difficult to translate. I used to enjoy like, during when I was doing my MFA. I used to like just try to write sentences like Henry James. It's quite fun. You find yourself going in very weird directions sometimes with your writing, because of how he does how he literally writes the English language. So I think it's hard to translate him, and I think he supposedly the Nobel Prize Committee would use basically popularity or just like how well the author sold or was known in their home country as a proxy because they just didn't know sometimes how good someone was. And Henry James is never like popular per se.
He was popular and he wasn't. His popularity
He was never as famous as
waned
his
and
brother. Let's just say that. He was
yeah.
never as famous as his brother. Like
Mm.
even today, I have a set of books that's like a great books collection, and they have his brother William James. It's a great books collection from like the 50s. They have his brother. They have William James in there, but they don't have Henry James. I don't think many people are reading William James that much nowadays. Like I think he's compared
Mhm.
to Henry James. But I think at the time, William James was much better known. And even in the years, 20, 30 years after his death, William James still was pretty well known, potentially more than Henry James. I don't think many people, people read Henry James now. I don't know how many people are reading William James.
Yeah, William James was probably part of that last generation of philosophers who could say something about the world totally. And he was also part of that generation that sort of fractured that ability to speak about to speak not in a systematic way, the way like Kant would do it, but in a way that sort of captured a lot of the human experience and also could communicate it to a very broad
You
audience.
still get that with a handful. Like you get like
A
and
little
there are
after, yeah.
Nobel Prize winners that we'll get to, like Bergson, Henri Bergson, I think fills in
Does
the category.
that.
Santayana,
Russell kind of.
Bertrand
Mm,
Russell is another one.
yeah.
He's another Nobel Prize winner, and I would say Santayana.
Mhm.
I don't think we have those anymore. I don't think they exist.
We don't. I think you see that more in economics. People who work in economics try to speak to the common person. I think people in philosophy are they're not connecting
No.
to the everyday person. And part of that is philosophy has grown incredibly complicated and sort of navel-gazy. But I think William James was able to do that. He was also at the forefront of like a lot of pragmatist thought. He was at the forefront of kind of practical psychology, also religious experience, the sort of
Yeah.
phenomenology of religion, which was a unique way to approach it. And
And that his book is a variety of religious experiences.
yeah,
That's like I think his yeah.
which is what he's not interested in. Is this thing true the way any philosopher before? He's interested in why are people interested in it and what is the experience of having a religious experience or a mystical
Which is interesting
experience.
because I bet a lot of people would be interested in that if they knew about William
Mm.
James. I just don't think he's just I don't know. I don't yeah, I don't he just kind of seems to have vanished. I don't know why, but
Yeah, I think he's probably better known as a philosopher of psychology, and that work is just isn't relevant
yeah.
anymore. Well, I think varieties probably is more relevant and more identifiable. And in his own life, Henry James's popularity seems to have grown and waned. I mean, I think Daisy Miller was very popular, and then he generated a lot of stuff that wasn't, and then um this was popular, but it was also seen from early critics as just sort of a ghost story.
Yeah.
Like it's like a gothic thing. It's a popular piece of literature. And I think that's what he was seen as like a guy who writes popular gothic stories or popular melodramas. That was, I think, how people consumed him during his life. And it seems to be the fine-tuning of kind of English professor critical skills that brought out a lot of the subtleties and complications in Henry James. That and there's just been a ton of adaptations of his work. Merchant and Ivory are probably responsible for a lot of the fame of Henry James nowadays because they keep trying to make his work, producible. And I think the fact that we read a lot of Henry James nowadays, and I think we do in the post 20th and 21st century,
I think
maybe
we do. I don't
maybe
know.
maybe the two of
I
us do.
think we read a lot of Henry James, and I do think he's. My gut says he seems to be very popular amongst like English majors. Like I think
Mm,
he's he's good enough. He's a really good writer who's difficult, but not Ulysses difficult. Like it's just sort of like you can read him, you can get him. He's not that complicated. So I think he's popular with like English majors. Not to be like that
mm,
that's a bad thing, but I think it's just sort of like this is a guy that everybody can just kind of read, and he's easy. They're good stories. They're fun stories. They're not that complicated, and yet they're really well written. And so there's sort of this. Yeah, I really like them. It's sort of it's comparable to something like Wuthering Heights or something, where
mm.
Wuthering Heights is a well-written book. It's really great. People love it because it's well-written and it's not that difficult to read, but it's a really good story and it's well-written. I think Henry James is in that somewhat similar category.
Yeah, I think he is. I think his best works are transcend that a little bit. Like if you look at Wings of the
You love
Dove
Wings of the
or
Dove, don't you? Yeah, I know
or
you
The
love Wings of the
Golden
Dove.
Bowl is
I
is
haven't read
another
them.
one.
I haven't read either of those.
They're a little bit they're so subtle in what they're doing that even though both books have a melodramatic plot, and so does Portrait of the Lady. I mean, those are effectively
Yeah.
melodramas. But he sort of approaches the melodrama kind of from the side. He never says anything obviously, that those works are just really, really intriguing to read. And I do think his prose style is unique in such a way that it's just a voice unlike any other.
Yeah.
Right. That's I think really what endures about him. He has these Byzantine sentences, which apparently comes from dictation. He dictated his books, which sounds exhausting for the dictator and the poor secretary who had to type this
So does
crap.
Dostoevsky. Dostoevsky dictated a lot
Oh,
of his
did
later
he?
books.
Oh God. Yeah, but you could kind of see it in his sentences that these are things that are his sentences have this quality of I'm thinking about something, then I'm going to zoom in on something, then I'm going to zoom back out, then I'm going to go in a different direction for a little bit. There is a sort of structured rambling to it that when you look at any individual sentence, if it's a good one, in detail, you could see how he's putting it together. But if you're just reading, there is this real feel that you're being led by a specific intelligence that's very, very enjoyable to read. There's an essay, I think I shared it with you, by William Gass about just one sentence from Henry James from his Travels in Italy compilation. He had a compilation of travel essays that he wrote. And it's this like brilliant little sentence that the sentence is about traveling from one place to another and then coming back to the place he started. And the subordinate clauses of the sentence map onto the actual map of the path he's going from like Rome to this other place and then back again. And so it's like you're like, oh, this was really put together. And this is just one sentence in this. There's, and if I didn't attend to it or William Gaston pointed out to me, I would have just been like, oh yeah, he's just kind of rambling along. But there is a lot of structure to his weird sentences.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that happens is this is like in my MFA program there was a number of people who were like they write like Henry James. They write Henry James sentences. And I used to just be like they don't. They just take a lot of individual sentences and string them together into very
Mhm.
long sentences. And I remember like putting a comment on one person's paper once when we like had to hand them in and I go, "This sentence is like walking through a beach with pebbles in my shoe. Like I am constantly picking punctuation out of my shoe because you've got so many punctuation marks to make this thing work that I go, it's impossible to read this and I go and not in a good way. Like I think that's one of the problems with Henry James is imitators just are like long sentences are good. That's what Henry James did, so I should do that too. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. Like, but some of these, I think there is a tendency, and I don't know if other MFA programs have this problem too, but our one definitely, a lot of people liked Henry James, a number of them did, and they were trying to imitate him. And it's like, my gosh, if you don't do this well, it's really frustrating. Even Henry James can sometimes be frustrating when you start a sentence in one way and you end up in a totally different place. But, as you say, there is an actual structure to them. They're being done very intentionally, not just I removed a whole bunch of subordinate clauses and strung this into a single sentence.
Yeah, it's one of those voices you can't really imitate. I imagine there might be a Hemingway problem in MFA programs,
Yeah,
maybe less now than decades earlier. But Hemingway is also one of those people who has a very specific voice that you actually can imitate. You could do
yeah.
a few things and sound Hemingway-ish, but it's kind of empty and kind of annoying when you read those imitators. Faulkner is probably another one
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
where yeah, you get that. And imagine if you're doing like you did like a Catholic MFA, Flannery O'Connor. Like, oh no.
They were very clear that we should not do Flannery
Okay,
O'Connor.
that's good. I'm just imagining
They did say they were like Flannery O'Connor is one of our guiding lights here, but we are going to intentionally avoid doing
Mhm,
Flannery O'Connor style stuff. Some people still did. But I think there was more. Henry James was much more of people's like cup of tea in
mhm.
that program.
Hmm, fair enough. But anyway, moving on to this book. So, Turn of the Screw was published by Collier's Weekly between January and April of 1898. It was serialized in 12 editions. Apparently, the original idea was from a story by the Archbishop of Canterbury that James heard at a party. And he wrote this story because he needed to pay his lease for his new home in East Sussex. And so he's paid about $900 for the rights, which I guess apparently is like $36,000 today. And then later was published as a novella in October of that year. So I was interested in what James thought about this story. And as far as I can tell, he was interested in a psychological realism
Yeah.
and in getting paid, which is
Yeah.
this, if he didn't desperately need money, this story would not exist. Um,
People are still reading Hamlet. I wrote that in like a fortnight. Shakespeare got to get paid.
Yeah, well, that's what it reminded me
But
of.
this,
It
I
was like
mean, it's just,
Shakespeare was
yeah.
like he does like Henry VIII probably to get like John Fletcher prepared to be a playwright. And then they're like, "Well, I wonder what Shakespeare was writing when he was back at home." It's like nothing. Nobody was paying him. He didn't care. He's stuck at home with his wife.
I
He's
imagine
probably
that's
not
like, I mean,
doing
even the
anything.
JD Salinger thing where everyone was like, what was JD Salinger doing all of that time? That he was sitting up like, probably nothing. Like, sitting at home watching TV.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what his oh God, I can't remember what his girlfriend was, but he liked these like the Jack Barr show apparently,
Yeah.
JD Salinger. Yeah. I think these
But I
people
think it
like
was like I still remember people were always like, he's gonna be when he dies, they're gonna open his vaults and there's gonna be all these great stories. They're gonna
mm,
emerge. And I'm well, firstly, no, because they were written by J.D. Salinger. But secondly, I was like, I don't get the impression he's doing anything. Like,
yeah.
I bet he's just sitting around and he's like,
Mhm.
nah, I get a lot of royalties from Catcher in the Rye. A lot of high school sophomores gonna
Mhm.
buy that book, so we're
Yeah.
all good.
He's no Tupac Shakur, that's for
Yeah,
sure. But so when the book was first published, what was interesting, I was reading review. I found an article that was looking at the critical history of it. Apparently, the reviewers in the initial years just thought it was a basic ghost story. Like
yeah,
this is a pretty good gothic ghost story. That was a trend in the late Victorian era. Was there was this like new gothic trend going on? I think both in literature and in architecture too, oddly enough. But this kind of like neo-gothic movement. And people are basically like, yeah, that's fine. One critic said, it's almost as good as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So that was kind of the level that it was at. And apparently Virginia Woolf was one of the first people to suggest that there's something more going on here. Like there's the ghosts were not independent of the governess. That was Woolf's point.
yeah. No, that's yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and she isn't going as far to say they're hallucinations of the governess, because you could say like her presence is required for them to be there, I think is more Wolf's point. But her argument is you need the governess there to kind of bring in the ghosts. And even James's biographer said the children are not haunted by the ghosts, they're haunted by the governess, which
Yeah.
I
I don't think that's
that's
correct.
true, but it gets us closer.
It gets us closer. You know, it is clearly one of the great literary ghost stories,
Mhm.
and most of the. I mean, I'm kind of that like all of the, essentially what I would call the great literary ghost stories tend to fall into that category where you don't know whether or not the person is just crazy, but it's not enough to just say that they're crazy. There's something else going on.
Mhm.
Um, like, have you ever read Haunting of Hill House? Shirley Jackson.
Yes,
I
yes,
love that book.
yes. That's yeah, I
Shirley
have. Yeah,
Jackson,
that
yeah.
is and her other book, We Have Always Lived in the
We've always
Castle,
lived in the castle,
is
yeah.
another one that uses that sort of well, it's the unreliable narrator trope.
Yeah, it's the unreliable narrator kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the Haunting of Hill House isn't. I think it is a narrator. It's a third person
Oh,
narrator,
is it
isn't
third
it? It
person?
is. It
Okay.
is. But it is still a. You're not 100% certain whether or not they're just crazy. Or,
Hmm.
but you do get the impression like something else has to be going on here because other people are kind of sensing this too, and they're getting experience. But it's unclear exactly what's going on, and that's a good one. The other great one I love is, although I don't think people read it anymore, is but I feel like it's one of the great ones is The Beckoning Fair one by Oliver Onions. Have you ever read that one?
No,
You
no, I
got to
don't
read
know
that
it.
one. Read the Beckoning Fair one by Oliver Onions. That's another great like
Hmm.
literary ghost story. But they tend to be something where you're not 100% certain whether or not what they're seeing is real.
Mhm.
And you kind of have to, and therefore it's sort of it's not just about the scariness of the story. There's something else sort of you have to kind of piece together exactly what are they seeing and what's real and what's not, and the psychology of the character, and it adds quite a bit of it. Um, the other great one,
Yeah.
by the way, that doesn't fit that category is The Supper at Elsinore. That's the other great literary ghost story, but it's not really, you might just say it's like not really a ghost story because they just have a conversation with the ghost. You ever read that
That's
one?
it. I haven't, no.
That's
They
a
just
Isaac
talk to the
Dennison.
ghost.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
Isaac
I
Dennison.
haven't. Mhm.
And it's basically like, well, it's these two women and their brother has died. Their brother had died years before, and they're supposed to be like elderly, and they're like, they live in the city, but they have a country house, and their like servant from the country house comes to see them and is like, your brother is just sitting in the dining room. Like you have to, he's just been sitting there. You have to go see him. He won't talk to anybody else. And they go, and it's clearly a ghost just sitting there. And then they basically talk to their long dead brother. And it's a good story. But that one's sort of just like no one treats it as unusual. It's just like, oh, he's just a ghost sitting at our dining room table. So that one doesn't quite fit the thing. But I think a lot of those that's where the really good modern ghost stories come from is it real or not? And you clearly know it's not just in their heads. There has to be something else here, but you could just explain it away as just being in their heads. So and they tend to give you the where you want that pendulum to swing is kind of up to the reader.
Yeah, and it seems to be at this point, especially, and James is saying this as much in his preface, that there's this kind of injection of the psychology in there.
Yeah.
Because if you look at like the original Gothic trend of the late 18th century, it tends not to be that the ghost or the haunting or whatever it is a product um of purely psychology, right? It is something actually spiritual that's
Something, yeah, there is
invading,
clearly a yeah.
or there's just an evil guy, right?
Yeah.
There's just some evil guy who is like an evil monk, who is, as in the book, The Monk, who is just debased and evil and doing evil stuff. It's not a realistic psychology, it's just an evil person, or it is an honest specter that is coming in and doing damage and haunting this ancient Italian castle or something like that. It seems to be and considering James's his family, that his brother was a very famous psychologist, that this is the point where you start to see the Gothic as not being about the external devil, but about the kind of the castle of the mind, right? That yeah,
Yeah.
the mind is a sort of place that has the kind of demons in it, not from outside. And Freud comes from this environment as well. So it becomes, you know, pretty interesting. I wonder if you could do that anymore. Like
Not
if
well.
feels like, yeah, the actually the ghost is that it's her, she's crazy, it's that type of thing. I can't imagine there's any energy left for that that type of thing. And I wonder if just the more basic, yeah, it's a ghost, it's a devil, it's whatever, it's
Yeah, I'm trying to think
actually
if
a corporeal
anybody
thing.
has
Yeah.
tried anything like that. I mean, ghost stories are so hard. I mean, they were easier 100, 200 years ago. Let's go 200 years ago, because sort of the veil between the natural and the supernatural was a lot thinner. People
Mhm.
were more willing to accept that. But I don't even know. I mean, we still, there is this sense of people like a true ghost story, like The Others or The Ring or
Mhm.
something like that that aren't just going to rely on jump scares. Uh, those they just tend most of those tend to operate as either they set themselves in the far distant past so that you
Mhm.
can sure, of course there were ghosts in the Civil War, sure, we can go with that, or there's almost this sense of like The Ring where it's like actually you could stumble upon something that releases a ghost any day. That's like the M.R. James style
Mhm.
of ghost story where who knows, maybe the videotape has a ghost in it. But that's very M.R. James. I love M.R. James. You've read some M.R. James, right?
I don't think I have. Can you?
Oh, I love him. He's like he's got like the photograph story. I've told you the lithograph one. I love that story. Um,
I don't know it.
usually,
No.
usually what happens in an M.R. James story, almost always, is somebody comes across an object, either a
Mm,
book or one of them it's a whistle, and they come across some sort of an object or a lithograph. They come across some sort of a thing, and it's a window, and it somehow unleashes some sort of demonic force or ghostly force. So the whistle one is a great one. It's like I'm not going to get the title exactly right, but it's like "Whistle and I will come, my lad" or something like that. And this guy is just walking along a beach, and he finds this by an old Templar castle, and he finds a whistle buried in the ocean, and he blows it, and then this like huge windstorm comes up, and basically that night he starts getting like attacked by this like wind monster. It's
mm,
like coming into the window. It's a really creepy story. It's really good. And like his bedclothes start coming to life and like start like trying to strangle. It's like it's really cool. But usually there's something like that. And so I think that that tends to be the modern equivalent. Like we kind of go with something like that, where they're either set in the far distant past where people just go, "Yep, sure, ghosts,"
mm.
or there's some sort of thing unleashes a ghost.
Well, I think the what I've seen in a few recent ones, and I'm talking about films now, not so much books,
Yeah. I don't know.
are
I mean, there are some books, but yeah, anyway, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, well, I would say analogy ghost stories. So there's two that come to mind. One which is I think really good called The Babadook, which was a
Mhm.
ghost story from like 2015, and then one more recently, maybe 2018, 2019, called It Follows. And The Babadook is about a woman whose husband has died and she's got a kid, and the kid is sort of weird. Like he's a like first grade, second grade, but he's like weird and he's getting in trouble at school and he's not a like a mean kid. He's just like weird. And she has to deal with that. And the Babadook ends up being this book she reads that appears in the house. She doesn't know what it is, but it's like a creepy little
But
story.
that's the like I found a book, an object appeared, and
And
it
then the
caused
ghost
it.
comes
Yeah.
out of that. But what ends up happening with it is it sort of expresses itself as what would happen if you had a kid and you love the kid, but you kind of didn't like the kid. Like the
Yeah.
kid was just, and so it becomes an analogy like this is that
Yeah.
spirit.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it follows is really cool idea is basically um this sort of STD ghost. If you have sex with this in this chain, right? So if you have sex with this person, this young woman, this teenager has sex with this boyfriend, and then he goes after they have sex, he goes, "Okay, it's coming for you." And she goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's when you have sex with me, a basically a spirit will come. It doesn't run, it just walks towards you. No one else can see it. It might look like your friend, it might look like just a normal person, but it's going to walk to you, and if it gets to you, it kills you. If you have sex
That's a
with some,
great idea.
yeah, if you have sex with somebody else, it will go to them first, and if it kills them, then it will go to you. So your job is to have sex
Which
with
is sort of
someone
like the
else.
ring just with sex.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just like
but I mean, with the ring, there isn't really an analogy. It's not like with the ring where you're like, well, this is about the experience of watching
true. Yeah,
videos.
yeah. No,
With
I
with
agree.
It
Yeah.
Follows, it's just kind of like this is about the experience of making a really bad mistake sexually, and how
Yeah.
that traces out to you. So I think that kind of analogy horror,
Well, that's
that's what's
almost like
going on now.
the let's take a psychological thing and give it physical
Hmm.
sort of body, like it's that I think that's what it feels like.
Hmm.
Take a psychological thing, give it a physical manifestation.
Yeah.
And that's what modern ghost stories are. And
Yeah,
they
I
allow
think
you to
so.
explore a different psychological or sort of social
Mhm.
things just in a with an actual thing you have to talk to and deal with.
Yeah, it's sort of how science fiction works, and science fiction, some of the better science fiction does that. It might do that for like the political, so it's like we have an interesting political question. Let's just make that world exist
Yeah.
and see what happens. But I think with James, this is the point where it's not so much there's an analogy for the psychological, but it's the psychological bubbles over and
Yeah.
ghosts are attracted to it or come out of it. And that's obviously what's going on here. And It's
Should give a
interesting.
brief summary of the novel, I guess,
Okay,
at this
yeah,
point.
we should. And then one of my favorite wrong interpretations is from Edmund Wilson, which I'll talk about. So, Turn of the Screw there's a party, and there's this guy Douglas whose sister's governess has a story, and then she wrote it down before she died, and then he's going to read it to them, and it's about
This, by
her.
the way, is one of the great. This is a tradition I wish we brought back because it's a Christmas ghost story, right? They're at a Christmas
Mhm,
party, and it's
mhm.
just like the whole thing is like they're it's Christmas, it's Christmas. You tell ghost stories, so I always love. I'm like, oh, I wish we had that tradition back here because it's
Yeah,
even the song, the
Frankenstein.
yeah, with Frankenstein is a similar kind of thing, but it's this idea of like, no, at Christmas you tell ghost stories. That's why like
Mhm.
even the scary ghost stories and tales of the glories of Christmas, because everyone's like, why are you telling ghost stories? Because I think somebody goes, they go, that feels like a line. They go, the person who's singing that line is a person who doesn't know what Christmas is, and they're like, we'll tell scary ghost stories and sing of the glories of Christmas. This is long, long ago. Like, I don't know what you're doing Christmas. This sounds good.
We
It's,
need a rhyme. We
yeah.
need a rhyme.
But I go, but I think that was like, that was the tradition. You told ghost stories on Christmas. The only one who's kept that tradition alive is Doctor Who, because Doctor Who always
Oh,
does it.
oh, do
On
they do this?
Christmas night, there's always that's like, a Doctor Who episode. And the whole,
Oh, there's a ton of Christmas horror movies that come out every year.
yeah, but they're usually terrible. And they're
Yeah,
not
they're usually
like,
crap. Yeah, that's
they're
true.
usually terrible. And they're
Yeah.
not, they're sort of just like
Mm.
murderous Santa Claus or
Yes.
Jack Frost the murderous snowman. Like they're
Yeah.
sort of camp.
Yeah.
They're camp. They're not meant to be like, okay, let's sit around the camp, let's sit around the
Let's
fireplace
be
tonight
good.
and let's try to scare the kids. Like I
Yeah.
think that's great. Like,
Yeah.
it's better
Oh,
to do
that'd
it
be
then than to do it at Halloween. Like Halloween's now just become like so over the
mm,
top, just kind of this stuff. It's like you should just try to scare kids on Christmas night.
yeah.
What a great idea.
Yeah, all right.
But
Um,
that tradition, I don't think anyone will ever bring back. But anyway,
no,
so this is a
we could bring.
Christmas.
I would
Okay.
bring that back, but my wife would hate that so much. I don't think it's gonna work for this
Do
family.
with my kids.
Yeah.
I'll do with my kids, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah. But so anyway, so we have this now is the
So this is a
governess,
Christmas ghost story. So
the
they're
Christmas
reading the
ghost story.
manuscript. They're reading the manuscript that they have received. That's
Mhm.
so it's a frame. That's the frame, and it's a
That's the
Christmas ghost
frame.
story.
We don't return to the frame,
You
but
never return to the frame, no. But
the basic governess is hired by a man who's, while in India, his brother was killed, and he's got these two orphan children, and he wants nothing to do with them
and I
whatsoever.
love. He's like, you. If you take this job, you must never contact me.
He's
It was
never.
never. I was never hear from you. You have complete control of everything in that household. You will run it. I want nothing to do with it. It's like such a great. It's like I'm not mincing words here. I don't want anything
Yeah.
to do with these kids.
Yeah, yeah. And so then she goes there, and there are two kids, a little girl, Flora, and Miles is the boy. And Miles has recently been kicked out of school. She doesn't know why. And while they're there, she starts to see these two ghosts, one of whom physically matches the description of the former groundskeeper, and the other might be the former governess who was having an affair with the groundskeeper, and the groundskeeper and her were in pretty normal contact with the children, and we're not entirely sure what that means, but they describe them spending a lot of time with the children, especially with Miles, right? Peter,
Yeah,
the groundskeeper, was spending a lot of time with Miles, and the children might have seen them coupling
it's
at
strongly suggested that they
yeah,
did. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, and now they have
And it's strongly
died.
suggested that the groundskeeper was, I don't think it's suggested that he was like sexually contacting the child, but
Mhm.
that he was teaching him a lot
Yeah.
and was sort of informing him of the birds and the bees in fairly graphic manner is how the
Yeah.
novel sort of, and again, this is all this is like this is you an adult reader have to infer this from like what this woman, because it's a first person narrative, it's the woman telling her story, and so she's like the classic Victorian, late Victorian era who just like won't say anything, so everything's like all alluded to, and so this is what you have to kind of read between the lines and be like, all right, yeah, I think that's what's
Yeah,
going on here
I
clearly.
think she says, or Mrs. Jessel, who's there's
Miss
a
Jessel is the yeah.
yeah, is a woman who's she's like the housekeeper. So she is that point
No,
of
Miss
contact.
Jessel is
Oh,
the
Miss Jessel is the former
former
housekeeper. Sorry.
housekeeper.
Mrs. Giles, who is the woman who's there all the time.
I can't remember her name.
There's a woman who is
The housekeeper,
the
essentially. Yeah.
housekeeper. She was there in the past. She's now there here. She's that point of contact. She mentions that I think Peter was um, what was the term she says? She says like in regular contact with Miles, and
Yeah.
it's really it's one of these things where you're like, what does that what
What
does
does
that
that
mean?
mean?
It's implied it's a very bad thing, but is it a bad thing because he's a bad man and just has a bad influence, like he's not raising him as a good gentleman, or is it something much, much, much worse? So you're dealing with that, and as it goes along, she starts to see our governess starts to see the ghosts. She starts to see Jessel and Peter um, in various places, and they are beginning to maybe have an effect on the children. And she becomes determined to uh, free the children from their
Exercise. Yeah.
influence.
Yeah.
But as you're going along, it's a little uncertain exactly how corporeal or real these things are, how much of this is just generated from the governess's somewhat heated and it's implied sexually repressed imagination. Um,
And how much is it just like with as far as the children go? I mean, it's strongly implied that the girl, the young girl is really loved her governess, and her governess. You find out later the governess had killed herself, and so is very upset at her governess's suicide. Isn't it stated that doesn't she didn't the girl find the governess dead too?
I think so. I think
I
she
think
found
it's
like the
that the
body on a
little girl
road.
found the governess drowned. The governess had drowned herself, and
Mhm.
she had found her own governess after her own parents have died, and so
Mhm.
she's kind of latched onto the governess as her mother, and she's the one who found her own governess dead, and then and Miles, who's clearly having some sort of yeah contact with this guy. You don't quite know what. And at the least, clearly this guy has taught him a lot, including like lots of swear words and bad words, and has clearly taught him a lot of just sort of like because the guy thinks it's funny to sort of corrupt the young gentleman is clearly the
Mhm.
implication here. And so how much of this is just these kids have just been put through the psychological ringer and that's why their behavior is off the walls, or how much of it is just they actually are haunted by these ghosts. Again, you're not sure. The governess is seeing the ghosts, but you how well can you believe her? Although she does kind of do there's some odd things. Like for example, she does in the book, which is different from the novel or the
Mhm.
movie. In
I
the
think I
book,
know what you're gonna say.
the picture. So she
Mhm.
describes the ghost. She says, "I saw this man, Peter Quince," and she says, "I don't know who it was. I saw I saw this man. I saw this ghost." And she describes the ghost, and apparently her description is a perfect match for Peter Quince. That's what the housekeeper says. Like that's Peter Quince. It's exactly what he sounds like, and then shows him a picture of Peter Quince, and she says, "Yes, that's the man that I saw." So how much that is clearly something unusual. How much of that was just a good guess? How much of that is maybe the narrator's just lying because she's writing the story, so she could
Mhm.
just as easily lie because she thought that's what happened, and she wants to give her story some credibility because she needs to be able to explain what happened. Or how much of it is maybe she just saw a picture of him at some point when she got there and just forgot that she saw it. So there's a whole, you could explain it away, or you could say, no, it's actually clearly supernatural. How else could she have known it? So there's a whole bunch of, there's no obvious answer. Like there is no answer to this
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one point. I think that's the only point where you have some sort of evidence that they're there.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have, and this is as you mentioned, it's something they smartly changed in the movie. You don't. There's no real evidence that she should have been able to describe him with that much detail. But as you just said now, like she's writing a story.
Yeah.
This is a story. It's not.
It is a
She's
story in which she has to explain some bad things that
yeah.
happened
Eventually,
by the end of it.
yeah.
So this is
Miles
a yeah.
dies by the
Miles is
end.
dead by the end of
He's
this
dead
story.
in her arms. He dies while
Yeah,
she's trying to help him. So, it would be very good. And she's also starts not ignoring the orders of her employer in order to send little Flora away to London to him because she feels the children are in danger. She's also separated by this material by I think 30 years, right? When we get the story, it's
something
like
like that.
30
Yeah,
year later. So you're right. There is this kind of a you can explain away this one thing as well. We're dealing with a lady who's not reliable. Um, it's also and returning to her and why other reasons why she might not be reliable. And this is in the frame. The frame is really interesting. Because that's the only time we get any evidence of her meeting the master, right? The person who's employing her. That doesn't happen, I think, in her words. That only happens in the words of the people at the party, right? I'm pretty sure that's her first chapter is after she is on her way
it could be.
to
Yeah,
Bly
that sounds right.
Manor.
Yeah,
Yeah. And when they're there, this is Douglas, who is the person who is got the manuscript and is going to tell the story. He knows her because she was his sister's governess. And they're like, "Oh, did you know so you knew her?" He's like, "Yeah, I knew her really well. But she was 10 years older." And there's this kind of suggestion there of like there was something there or something possible between her and this and
this
Douglas,
guy. I
this
didn't pick up on
guy.
that when I read it, but that's certainly possible.
Yeah, and then he also talks about her describing to him when she met the master of the house. And there's clearly like, oh yeah, this guy was really handsome and she really
Yeah,
liked him.
there's clearly sexual tension between her and her employer. That is
Yeah.
clear. Yes.
Yeah, and but that's filtered through this guy who had some sort of attraction, if not more than that, for this woman. So there's just like it opens with this like repressed sexual burst. It's well, it's not a burst because it's repressed, but it's like this firecracker of sex that is not going off.
Yeah.
Everybody can see it. Everybody can see it's lit, but for some reason it's not exploding. And then you go into this story, which is all about these kind of inappropriate sexual contact that is never articulated. Right. The only
Yeah.
thing that's really articulated is Peter and Miss Jessel had an affair.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's the only thing that's made clear
mhm.
that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, that we I mean, I guess we don't know it, but at least the housekeeper came out and said, yes, this is what happened. This is why she's dead. Um, and even
Well,
that's
he
kind of
died. The guy died. Didn't he like freeze to death? He like fell
mhm,
outside, and so he froze to death, and then she kills herself after that.
afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but she kills herself because of the affair, right? She's sort of destroyed because she was a person of high class, Mrs. Jessup.
Miss Jessel. Well,
Jessel, I think she was a lady because that's what they refer to her as. Like, she was a lady, and she was having an affair with some guy, just
she was probably, I mean, I think the implication would be like it would be something like, again, I don't know the exact Victorian sort of structure, but it would be something like if, let's say in Pride and Prejudice, those girls are all quote unquote ladies, right? If
Mhm.
they don't ever get married and the father dies, they're penniless. And so basically what are they going to do? They probably become governesses.
Mhm.
So it's probably a comparable.
Oh, I think that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it's a comparable
Yeah,
social situation, exactly. And so
yeah.
they're girls who were raised to marry potentially lords, yeah, or at least parsons or individuals of education, yeah. And she's sort of like our last, our did we do that last week? Yeah, it was last week. We did the uh, Miss Julie. There's like the
Mm,
Miss Julie thing of, yeah, she's sleeping with a commoner, with the the
mm,
groundskeeper.
yeah. Yeah, it's like so
Lady
she's
Chatterley's lover. Lady Chatterley can get away with it. I guess this lady can't.
no. But yeah, she's like the example of she's not just physically and morally degraded, but she's like
Yeah.
social degradation as well. She's all kind of wrapped up in this, and this guy, he seems to be able to pull down the little bit of society he's able to get his hands on, even though we, never really meet him, or I guess we see the phantom of him. And so you also have that stuff too at the beginning, which is this is all filtered through a potentially hyper horny lady.
Hyper horny lady. Yeah.
Yeah. Who is also, as you're saying, like she went on to have other jobs. That's She went on to be governess of other people. So apparently she got away with it. Like the kid died in her care and she, she she moved on. She moved on to another job. So there's this sort of like an apologia aspect to
Yeah.
it that might be going on. There's this really like potentially like a subconscious horniness that's filtered through the thing. It's a really
It's a
weird
great.
experience.
Yeah. It's a
Really.
very odd
Mhm.
book, but this is why maybe, and then maybe this is just the thing, is like if you read it contemporaneously, you just didn't pick up on all of that because you weren't your brain wasn't cued to read those kind of things.
Mhm.
Whereas a modern reader reads this and is like, I mean, you're plucking out these Freudian,
Yeah.
like sort of just like psychosexual
Mhm.
markers throughout. Like they're so obvious. But I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe they were obvious to a contemporary reader, but they didn't express them themselves.
It seemed like Virginia Woolf was kind of seeing it, and she wrote an essay, I think, in 1918. So
Yeah, but I wonder, was that, did she just, I mean, she's going to be more attuned to that, having read her things. Like she's going to notice that. But that's, I guess, did they just not get it? If you
it
read this
was,
when this thing came out, if you
I
were,
don't,
the housewife reading this thing, did you just
Mhm.
not get it, or did you get it and go, "Oh wow, I can't say anything though, because if I admit that I know this, then I'm admitting that I think this way, so I can't ever say
I
anything."
don't, the thing is though, I don't know if the comment, so when I was looking at who was first getting the kind of like, no, this is her sexual frustration
Yeah.
acted out in the world. There was one person who did it in like the early 1930s, and then the
Okay.
the famous person was in 1934 was Edmund Wilson, who's a very famous critic of the 1930s. He's kind of, I think, more famous now because he hated Lord of the Rings and wrote about how much Lord of the Rings sucked. And he made the famous argument, the only reason why people read Lord of the Rings is because it's long and they think long things are good. But
Well, that's
anyway,
my argument for most books today, but yeah,
yeah, well,
it's my argument
um,
for Addie LaRue. Um,
good. But so Edmund Wilson, he was the one who was like, no, it's Freudian. And then, but
okay.
he also was really irritating in his, like, he has one point, he's like, where do they first see Peter Quince? On the top of a tower.
Oh
Phallic
God.
symbol. Yeah, it's like that
Yeah.
kind of
Okay. Yeah.
stuff.
Sometimes a cigar is a cigar, dude. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Fine. Yeah. That's
yeah.
stupid. Yeah.
And I don't know who it was, but some critic kind of pointed out to him the point you made about like, well, she describes Peter before she sees him.
Yeah.
So there potentially is, the book is not closing down the potential that they're real ghosts, right?
Yeah.
That is certainly open. And when he was told that, he kind of recanted a lot of his stuff. But I think like the 30s were where people started to go, oh,
There's something
there's
else here. Yeah.
something here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't. That's what I'm wondering. So it seems like the answer is no. They didn't get it. Like
Hmm.
this is.
Well, that's what the early reviewers, when I read
But how much?
like a
Again,
collection of them.
I would love to know. I still wonder, and I can't. I just don't know. I don't know enough about like critics at the time. If even if let's say a critic had noticed it, could he have said that, or would it have been like? You can't say that. You can't say that this is like a
Oh, and a
sexual repression thing.
thing.
Could
Yeah.
you know
I
what I
don't
mean? Like, because if you
I'm
are, you're admitting that it's like that you see it,
mhm.
which means you could only see it if you think that way, and you can't admit that you think that way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know whether did they not see it, Or did they just like, I can't admit that I see it?
Mhm.
And so all of them saw it and were just pretending they didn't. Because it's, again, a modern reader is going to read this and be like, it's all this giant
Mhm.
psychosexual thing. Is
Mhm.
it, how could they just not say it? You know,
I
I don't
don't
know. I just
I
don't know.
don't know. I mean, well, I get the impression that they could because they talked about the sort of evil of the ghosts, that the ghosts represented evil, and they represented kind of like a sexual the sexual
Yeah,
evil sexual behavior. So you're talking about sexual behavior as being a principal aspect of the book, and it's obviously that there's some sex in the book because these two
there
people
has to be. Yeah,
are
yeah,
having
yeah.
sex, and they're clearly talking
Well, but I
about
mean,
it.
like Anna Karenina, obviously they're
Yeah,
having sex. Like we
yeah.
got that.
And
They're
they're
fairly open about
also,
it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I do, you also have to be pretty dull. I think also contemporary readers would also recognize they're either having sex in front of the children or talking to the children about
Children
it.
about
I
sex.
think
Yeah,
maybe
that's clearly there.
later readers would go, are they having sex with the children? Like, are they
Yeah,
molesting the children? That may be later. But so there is this like really inappropriate sexual stuff that is just on the
there. Yeah,
surface. Yeah, there's no reading you have to do to find it. So my guess is that they just didn't that most readers were um
we're just seeing them. They're ghosts. They're just
it's a
ghosts.
ghost
That's all it
story.
is.
Yeah,
It's a ghost
there's
story. There's no doubt they're ghosts. This is not in her head. This is not
mm,
her expression of her own frustrations. They're just ghosts.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
ghosts and she's good. The one common interpretation was she's good, the ghosts are evil, and so it's good versus evil trying to
Yeah.
save the
Okay.
souls of children.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah, which is, again, like his biographer, James's biographer was like, no, that's wrong. The children are in danger from the governess. They're being haunted. His phrase was, they are haunted by the governess. Now, I think that's wrong. I don't think that's right,
I don't think that's right. I
but
think
it's
there's
helpful.
Yeah, I mean it's helpful in the sense that, I mean, again, no matter how no matter which angle you go with, okay, either there are ghosts or there aren't. Okay, if there are ghosts, then clearly and she's got a valid case here. But even if there aren't, these kids, a lot of whack things have happened to these kids. Even if they're not being molested, again, they've been put through an absolute psychological ringer. So even if they're not haunted by actual ghosts, these kids have just have seen things and have had things happen to them that are just really bad. And so she's not helping them particularly with handling this trauma. But, these kids have been through a lot. I think that would be true regardless. But to the point of, would this situation be there if the governess weren't there? These kids would still have some serious problems, even regardless of whether there are real ghosts or not. She just is the absolute worst person to handle this, and she just tends to just draw out this kind of poison in a really bad way.
Because I think she misinterprets the situation. She interprets it as the ghosts are using the children to get to each other.
Yeah, they're trying to use the children as sort of sexual
Conduits?
proxies, conduits. Yeah. Yes, that is true.
Yeah, and I think there's really no evidence for that, right? I mean,
No,
that seems to come right just out of her head.
out of her own head. Yeah.
Yeah, it was that these ghosts, which seem to be able to appear at will, somehow need the children in order to get to each other, and the consequence of that is like Flora hates her because
Yeah.
she's then has to like, she's screaming at Flora. Now Flora does say something to the housekeeper, and the housekeeper's kind of says, "Oh, she admitted some things, but you don't know." And so the governess just has the complete wrong response to it, which is to kind of like grab Flora and try to quote unquote save her. And Flora's response to this is, I hate you. What is wrong with you? Get
What's
away
wrong
from
with you?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she completely misinterprets it. And then she tries to talk to Miles about it. And there's this kind of like, like, why were you expelled from school? Which is clearly a delicate subject that she's not prepared to talk to him about, and he doesn't seem to know how to talk about it, and she just wants answers to save him from the possession or whatever the hell's going to happen to him. But he's like, this is not the way to go about it. First of all, we have no idea if this is true or not, and this is also not the way to go about it. This kid really doesn't know how to talk about this, and he doesn't seem to want to know how to talk about this. Um, it's it's really interesting to think of her as like, even if it's real, you're screwing it up. You're
Yeah.
screwing everything up. Um, the kids are, yeah, they're in danger from ghosts, but they're
You're
they're kind of in danger
you're
from you
really not
too.
helping them.
Yeah. And you're also sending her back to London with a guy who wants nothing to do with her. Oh God, you're here? She sent the kids here? Oh, oh, go away. I mean, that must be horrible to have to go back to that freaking guy. Yeah. Um,
All right, movie.
the
Movie.
movie. So we have the movie. The movie is this has to be in my top 100 movies.
Oh, it's definitely a top 100. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is, of course, we're talking about The Innocents, the 1961 Jack Clayton film, which I think was his first film ever.
Who
Um,
wrote the screenplay? That would be a key.
so the screenplay has an interesting story. It's based on The Innocents, the play by William Archibald. In William Archibald's 1950 play, this is when it was adapted from Turn of the Screw, it is clear that they're ghosts. There's no
Oh,
ambiguity
interesting.
in the play. And so, having worked with Truman Capote before,
Yep.
Clayton brought in Truman Capote because he's like, I want there to be ambiguity. And so all the ambiguity in this is something Capote added in. He also brought in.
Except they have a brilliant. The whole thing is they. So the thing they do with the ambiguity that I love. I had to write a paper on this in college. Um, and because the whole point is like for the most part with the ghosts she is like 100% certain she sees them every single thing she says she sees them, whereas in the movie they constantly undercut it. Like there's always a natural explanation for like the sound or the sight or the things like that, with one exception which I love.
Is it the what would be the one?
the
Is it?
tear the tear on the chalkboard.
Oh,
I
okay.
love that touch.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like she goes, so the whole thing is like every single time there's always like there's a natural explanation. Like she sees Peter Quince, but she sees him like they make it very clear with the camera work. There's like a bloom and there's light, so you can't quite see it. Or even I love the touch when she sees the ghost through the window. She looks out the window and she sees the ghost. She said this is the first time she sees Peter Quince. She looks out a window. Do you know what happens afterwards?
When she first sees him, no. What happens
She
then?
goes out onto the porch to look for him, and then when she's peering through the window to see what's happening, and that's when the housekeeper walks in, and the housekeeper sees her own reflection with the other ones through the window, so they see this like funhouse mirror of reflections.
Hmm.
And the housekeeper gets scared because she sees her outside there, and you know, at the same moment that like the same position that she had just seen the ghost. So the idea
Hmm.
is like they're undercutting whether she even saw the ghost because they're clearly playing with like the reflections of the glass and this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So every single time that she sees a ghost, and even the example that we gave before where she gives this really good description of the ghost beforehand, they do have that, but she's seen a picture of the ghost of Peter Quince beforehand. So, and the housekeeper even says, she says, like, how could I have known that he, even that description, and the housekeeper's like, you saw a picture of him. Like,
Hmm.
she's like,
Yeah.
that's how you knew it. So they undercut it at all costs. But then there's this one great moment. So this is, I still say this is one of the scariest moments I ever had. Like I love the sequence, and I think it's so scary. I think it's absolutely terrifying when she sees Miss Jessel outside. And I watched this movie. It was in college, and I watched it. It was like by myself, like basically in this like this room that's above the theater. There's like this one room, and there's like a doorway that like goes down the stairs into the theater, and it's like this. You know, it's like I was probably watching it at like 3 in the morning in an abandoned academic building, and there's this sequence in the movie where they're sitting outside. And the governess is sitting there with Flora, the little girl, and she looks across the river, and the girl is singing this really creepy song, which I love that song too. She's singing this like really creepy song, and then she just goes like, "Flora, who is that? And they just they show across the water just this woman just standing stock still in just like black with like a veil over her face, just staring across the river. And I'm like, oh God, that is really it is really, really creepy, right? It's like such a creepy, creepy moment. But later on, but so again, all of these moments could be explained. But there's one moment when she goes into the classroom, there's a little classroom that they have, and she sees Miss Jessel, the woman, like crying over, like at a desk, and she's like terrified by it. And then she goes in and she picks up a chalkboard. There's like a little chalk slate there, and there's a tear on the chalk slate. So that's the only physical manifestation. So every single one of them is basically undercut except that one. That's the only one where it's like, well, there was a tear. Like this thing clearly left something. Like there's no drip. There's no explanation. Like that came from somewhere. So I love that. That's the one touch I love about the movie is they undercut it at all costs, but they give you one little
One little.
gem where it's like, okay, that one you can't explain away. Every other one of them you could explain away. You can't explain that one away. So they give you one thing to be like, maybe it is real. It's like it's a great little touch. Love that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about this. Deborah Keir plays the main character, the female lead. Um, One thing I've seen this movie maybe 10, 12
Yeah,
years
I've seen
ago.
it quite a few. Oh, I was gonna say 10 or 12 times. I was like,
No, no, no.
I've seen
This
it
is
quite a few
only,
times. Yeah,
I think, my second time seeing it
I've seen
only.
it quite a few times. Yeah,
Yeah, I love how there's little bits and moments of ego in what she does, right? Like when she gets a compliment or something like that, there's one point and she has like a little smile after
yeah.
it. So there's a real kind of sense of kind of self-possession that's interesting. And the kids are
Kids
really
are
good,
really good.
especially the kid who plays Miles. I want to
He's
give him
very good. Yeah.
credit, but I
Oh,
can't.
his poem that he reads.
Mhm. I'm Martin Stevens. I don't know what he did with his life, but um,
He's
y
great.
yeah, very, very good. Like very like an adult little. Oh, I guess he's still alive.
I would
He's
think so. The movie's
yeah,
only 6 years old. He was
yeah,
like 7 in the movie.
yeah,
He's probably a little older. He's probably like
hmm
10.
yeah. Um, uh, oh, he became an architect in Portugal.
Oh,
So
well,
good.
that's unexpected.
Yeah, well, yeah, there we go. But he's just like a little man. That's the thing, and he is very much you very much get the sense from his performance that he could be like an adult who's possessed, like
Yeah,
a kid who's possessed by an adult. Like he just
he
seems,
seems like an adult,
yeah.
like in a very kind of creepy manner.
And it's that scene where he kisses her.
Yeah,
He's wishing her good night, and he leans in and kisses her, and the camera, he just keeps on her lips and the camera just watches them kissing, and it's a really, really, really unsettling point. um that was also, yeah, an intensely creepy thing. But I think it's for me, that's what really sells it is that little boy eventually is, there seems to be something else there in
I
him.
just love when he does his poem reading by candlelight, and it's like,
Mhm.
"Where is my lord? He is in the grave." You know, like, it's
Yeah.
just like, God, that's really creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, the sound design is
The sound
wonderful
design
in
is
this.
brilliant because
Yeah.
it does a lot of what do you call diegetic sounds
Hmm.
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of these sounds. Like I remember writing in this in my paper. There's a lot of things where like something there'll be like almost like a scream, but then it will turn into like a bell ringing or something. So it happens like over and over and over again. Every time she like sees something or something weird happens, there will be like some sort of sound within like so there'll be almost this like weird noise, but then it will turn out to be like a cat like walking like by a window or something. So
Mhm.
all of these like weird sound design things that happen will always get an in movie explanation of a bell ringing or a tea kettle going off or like something like that. So they always it's such a cool effect because we're so used to having these like weird noises that are telling us that danger is coming. And so you get those, and then it's like, oh no, it's just the piano. Like
Mhm.
it happens like a number of times where they use those, they give it an in movie explanation
Mhm.
for an odd sound. And I think it's just like such a nice touch for a
Yeah.
filmmaker.
Yeah, the sounds are innocent except from her perspective. She's the
Yeah.
one who makes them dangerous or makes them threatening. Yeah.
But there's a lot of it. It's a really it's a great example of an adaptation. Like this is one of the great film adaptations because you can't take the book directly because if you did, you'd end up with the example you just gave, which is like, oh, the ghosts are clearly real. Well, that's stupid. You ruined it.
Hmm.
You know, and the thing is, you almost have to because it's a film. The media, it's much easier for her to say it in the film. Like, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this, I saw this. We inherently don't trust it. Whereas in a movie, if we see the ghosts really clearly all the time, clearly like we're going to accept it. This is what the film is
Hmm.
showing me. That's how film works. We generally will accept it. So we have to, the filmmakers have to constantly undercut it, and they do a really good job of that, of always making you think like, well, is it not? And it's a great example of adapting the material for the
Hmm.
medium for the medium.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it works really well. It's a great,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think by cranking up the ambiguity, I was going to say I think I like this movie more than the book.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not sure. I'm on the fence about this just because it is unambiguously ambiguous. The movie that's the point. The point
Yeah,
is you don't know. Well, with the book, you can easily read this as just a straight ghost story and not pick up on
on
what's
anything
going
else, yeah.
on with this.
Or you could read it and go, the ghosts are clearly not real.
Yeah.
She's clearly bonkers. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and so the book is the ambiguity isn't right on the surface. It's not, it doesn't seem like it's the point of it. So I'm not entirely sure. I love a lot of those changes. Like I love the change of her finding the photo of Peter,
Yeah.
so that there's, there is a justification for him not being real, which you don't quite have in the book. But so that's where I'm standing. I think this is a very strong interpretation. I have not seen the other ones. I know
I
Colin
haven't seen
Firth
any
did
others yet.
one. There were two that were made in like 2020, I think. One was a
Oh.
film, then one was a contemporary one called, I think it's called Bly Manor, which was a television show.
Oh, I remember seeing that. It came out during COVID, didn't it?
I think it did, yes.
Yeah, I
It was
remember seeing that at the time and being like, "Oh, I don't want to watch that because it's probably going to ruin the innocence." So I never watched it.
I saw it. It was part of a television series which would adapt a kind of classic horror movie
Yeah,
in a
I remember
contemporary
that. Yeah,
way. And I saw the first season, which was Hill House, The Haunting of Hill
yeah,
House,
I remember
and
that.
it
Yeah,
was people loved it, and I thought it was pretty awful. So I thought that since Bly House was getting or Bly Manor was getting all these compliments, that I just didn't want to see it. Yeah, I thought Hill House was. I mean, I watched the whole thing because you want to know what happens to these
yeah.
people. But I thought, if
I love that book. You got to read the book. It's a great book.
yeah, yeah. But I thought the TV show was virtually unwatchable. It was so I never went to Bly Manor or Bly House, whatever the hell it's
I
the
never,
second
never it's
season's
called.
called. But I haven't seen the BBC Colin Firth one either, where Colin Firth plays
Who's
the.
Colin Firth going to play Peter Quince?
No, I think he plays the governor. I think he plays the not the governor, excuse me, the employer.
But he's only in it for like 2 minutes.
They had Michael Redgrave in this one. Michael Redgrave's a big deal actor. He's only in it
Okay,
for
is
like
he?
3 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, maybe he plays. I thought he played
I mean,
the
who else is he going to play other than there's only
yeah,
you can't. He's not playing the child. It's either that or Peter
yeah,
Quince. Peter Quince
yeah,
doesn't speak.
yeah. So I guess he's in charge. Yeah. I will say one thing about a little factoid before we go about Jack Clayton. Apparently his career didn't really go very well because he was too picky about what movies he would do. He's constantly getting in fights with people at the studio, and he just wouldn't do things. And one of the movies he turned down was Alien, the 1970s Sigourney Weaver Ridley Scott movie, that the space horror movie.
Which that would have been great.
Imagine the Jack Clayton version of
Version of
Alien.
Alien
That would have been
and really creepy. It would
amazing.
have been really
That
great.
would have been so good. And I don't dislike Alien, but my God, that would have been so, so much better.
You wouldn't have
Uh,
seen the alien until like a minute before it ended, and it would have been horrible.
yeah,
Like horrific.
yeah, yeah. It would have been in like yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
wouldn't have.
you wouldn't see it until like
Mhm,
literally the last like minute and a
mhm,
half, and then it would be like, oh my God, and then and
mhm.
then the movie would end, and
Yeah.
you would be like, you would leave the theater like just like shell shocked.
Mhm. Yeah. Ah. So, anything else we have to say about The Turn of the Screw, John
No,
Clayton, Ben
great movie,
Revere?
great book. Is this
Hmm.
our last of our
This is the
ignobles, or
last
the last of
next,
our
yeah,
no Nobels? Yeah, because
yeah,
this
our
is
ignoble.
we basically we went the ignoble is a real thing.
Oh, is
Um,
it?
oh yeah, there's
I
an
don't know it.
ignoble. Yeah,
Oh, there's an
there's
ignoble
basically
prize.
it's like a prize given to like I think it's mostly in the sciences, and they give it as like the worst scientific experiment. Like the most useless scientific experiment. But the best part is they gave it to a guy. I still remember this. They gave it to a guy for doing the levitation of a frog. like doing frog levitation in like 2001, and that guy actually won a real Nobel Prize like a few years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Oh.
there's one guy who has won the Ig Nobel. I mean, they're usually literally things like measuring the length of penises on moths or so, like this kind of thing. You're like, what the fuck? What are you doing with this? Like that was the point of the Ig Nobel. It was just those kind of just unbelievably idiotic things that clearly someone got some funding for and did. But there was one example of a guy who won the Ig Nobel and an actual Nobel Prize. So
Oh,
not the Ig Nobels, the no Nobels.
the no-no bells. All right.
But I think
It,
we've caught up to 1918. So we were only doing people who died before
yeah.
1918. We are
He
now caught
does
up.
in
We have
1916. And so now, next week or in 2 weeks, we'll be starting the new season, which is
yeah.
going to be, I think we're doing 1918, which nobody won, so 1919 until the war, till World
Until
War
the war,
II.
yeah, I think we're gonna do that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm excited. The 20s
We got
aren't
some
too
good
bad.
we start getting some good
We start getting
some
ones.
good
We got
ones.
Knut Hamsun is
Yeah.
coming up. Thomas Mann is also in the
Hmm.
1920s. 1930s, we have a few good
We
playwrights.
get Sigrid Undset.
Sigrid Undset.
Get Sigrid Undset. I love
She's
Sigrid Undset.
30s or 20s? I
She's
think she's 20s.
28. She's
28.
28.
Okay, and then Mann is 29. So that'll be a
Yeah.
good back to back. And then we'll have in the 30s, we'll start getting
We get Sinclair Lewis. You're not excited for
oh
Babbitt?
goodness, I am. Uh but I am
Our
excited for
first Nobel Literature Prize winner in America, Sinclair
Sinclair
Lewis.
Lewis.
Everybody loves Sinclair Lewis. Everybody
Yeah,
loves
he's
Arrowsmith and all these great American
Main
novels.
Street. Yeah. We have 30, we also have Pirandello and then
We have
Eugene
Eugene O'Neill. We have
O'Neill in
Eugene O'Neill in
35.
there. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
Pirandello. We get O'Neill. We have a number of good ones
We
coming
have
up. So,
yeah. So it's going to be, I think, a much better time. The
well, at least more. Yeah, I mean, they'll. I'm sure there's some clunkers in there, but at
mm,
least like we're not gonna. We could only have Bergson. We get Henri Bergson, I think, in there
Henri
too.
Bergson is 20 in the 20s
Yeah, I think
somewhere.
he's in the 20s. We've got
27, I think, something like that.
yeah, we've just got a lot of. I'm sure there are some clunkers, but like we were really scraping to find some good
Yeah.
ones.
I
Now we start getting some legit,
mm,
real powerhouse writers
yeah.
that are really talented. Yeah.
I will say the John Galworthy week when we have the Forsyth saga.
Oh, don't you love that?
I have never read it.
Oh,
I read 10 pages of it and stopped because I had other things to do, and it's longer than Anna Karenina. So that
I
is
get
going to
cracking. I
be
mean, at least I've read New Thompson. I've read a number of the other ones, but like,
I've
I mean, Kristen Lavren's daughter. What are we gonna do?
oh
That
yeah.
thing is like nine. The thing is like 2,700 pages.
Yeah, that's I've actually I've unfortunately I've read that. But I think we're doing
I read the first volume. I haven't read
yeah.
volumes two or three.
I've read the three of them, but I don't know how many. There's only a few weeks between that and the Forsyth saga,
It's
and
gonna
I
be a
think
struggle.
like yeah, we're getting into really good works, and we're also getting into gargantuan works. This is like the 1920s and early 30s are the saga years,
Yeah.
where every once in a while, just a giant Norse saga needs to win somebody a Nobel Prize. And so, while I think this is going to be an exciting new season,
There might be some difficult weeks in there, yeah.
yeah, it's going to be
I mean,
interesting.
at least for a few of the weeks, I've read all of Pirandello. Not all of
Mm,
Pirandello, but I've read a decent chunk of Pirandello. I have read everything by Eugene O'Neill, so I've
mm,
got those weeks covered.
yeah.
So I'm not, maybe I'll have to really crank on the.
Oh, Bernard Shaw
Oh,
has
Bernard Shaw's in there
been in
too. Oh,
this
isn't
season.
and so is what's his name? The poet.
Oh,
Uh,
no.
by my playing his name, Irish poet. The
Oh,
um,
yes, yes, yes.
Slouching
Second
towards
Coming.
Bethlehem. Yeah, the
Mhm.
slouching towards Bethlehem.
Yates. Yates is
Yates. I'm
in.
like, good
Yeah.
Lord, good. Yates is in there. So like
Yeah.
we've got again like this is a good
Mhm.
sequence of writers.
Yeah. This is going to be like classic era. I think this, and then shortly after the war, like right after the war until the 1950s, it's going to be like second like
Yeah, we
classic
get a number. You get like
writers,
Faulkner, and you get like
T.S.
yeah,
Eliot and Hemingway, and yeah.
Gide, and you get
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of you
Hmm.
get a lot of good writers in there. Again,
Yeah.
you get some good. I mean, there still are good writers that come about after that, but then you just start getting into like we're going to give it to a Russian, and then we're going to give it to an American, and then we're going to give it to a
Hmm.
Russian, and then we're going to give it to an American, and then we're going
Yeah.
to give it to a Cuban, and then to a
Hmm.
Costa Rican, and you're like, you are really trying to
Yeah, yeah. You
balance
you
this
want to be neutral so very badly.
so badly. So
Yeah,
it's like that's where they do
yeah,
start
I
running into
know
some problems.
it's another like 45 weeks until we reach Solzhenitsyn. I'm terrified of that episode, but that's
We can just
next
do.
season.
Yeah, I mean, Solzhenitsyn's fine. You can do Day in the Life. Day in the Life is pretty short.
Okay, that's
We don't
fair.
have to do the Gulag.
Archipelago.
You don't have to do that. But I mean, there are a lot of good writers in this sequence coming
Mhm.
up,
Yeah.
and a lot of writers that I've read. So fortunately, the really long ones I can try to catch up on.
All
So
right. Well,
looking
audience,
forward to it.
join us for the 1920s and 1930s. This is the Interwar Nobel Prizes in Literature. We will see you then. You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201 467 8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found.
Wow, Talking Studios.